Hello sewing people of the internet. If you're new to the channel, I normally do sewing videos generally oriented around making backpacks and duffel bags and things like that out of corduroy nylon and wax canvas. Like this. But today's a little bit different. A friend asked me to shorten this leather gun belt for him. Now, my day job is sewing leather, but it's thinner leather used in travel bags and briefcases and that sort of thing. I am not a leather worker. And I don't really have any experience using the kinds of tools that are normally used to make things like belts or, saddlery or that kind of thing. But I thought this would be an interesting project to show that you can do something like this with minimal tools. It's relatively simple. The only thing I have to do is cut the belt shorter and then add the decorative stitching. This is just one piece of leather, and the stitching on the edges is purely for decoration. And then I have to do something to replicate the finish on the edge. We'll get to that a little bit later. First, let's shorten the belt. Hi. You're a good girl. So this is a pretty simple procedure. My friend just wants the belt shorter because it was too long and the tail flopped around. This is actually a sizing belt, so it has numbers stamped in for the different sizes so that his customers can figure out what size belt they need to order, but he's just reusing this as his own belt. So the way this should be done is to get this shape. There's like a chisel-like tool, I don't actually know what it's called, that you would put on to the leather and hit with a mallet and cut the leather to that shape. I don't have one of those, and I'm not going to order one just to make this simple procedure. So what I did was I already cut off a bit of the end so I could do some practice with the tool that I'm going to use to do the stitching. And I'm going to use this end as a template. And my friend already marked where he wants this cut off. So I'll just take the end that I cut off and put it on the mark. I'll just use this long nose marker. You could probably just use a Sharpie. And I'll mark. And then to cut it, I'm just going to use a regular pair of scissors. These are just Fiskars shears you can buy at any fabric store. And these easily cut through the leather. It's no difficulty at all. I just went slow to try to make it somewhat neat. And then to clean up the cut a little bit, I'm just going to use a little X-Acto knife. And that's close enough for what we're doing. Now I need to duplicate the stitching around the end of the belt, and to do that I'm going to use a Speedy Stitcher. This is a stitching awl that allows you to duplicate a lock stitch similar to what would be made by a sewing machine, but only using one thread. The existing stitching is about 1/8" stitches, so I'm going to try to get pretty close to that. And I'm first going to use this awl that came with my Speedy Stitcher. By the way, I bought this at a vintage market or flea market. This is an old one. They are still currently produced. I don't know how the new ones compare to this one or whether it includes this or not, but this came with mine. So I'm going to use this awl to punch the holes that I will then sew through with the stitcher. Right about now, you might be thinking that the holes that I'm punching with the awl are too close to the hole in the belt for the belt buckle. And you're right. I realized my mistake, and off camera I re-trimmed the belt to put the stitches farther away from the hole. So now to form the stitch, I want to pull enough thread out to easily cover this distance and have a little bit extra. I'm using one of the needles that came with the Speedy Stitcher. It's a number 8S. I don't know how that compares to standard needle sizes for machine sewing needles, but that's what I'm using. Ideally, if I had a leather sewing pony clamp, I think they're called, to hold this in place so I could sew it, that would be easier, but I don't have that. And the point of this is basically with one of these and stuff you have laying around in your sewing room, you should probably be able to do this. So that's what I'm going to do. By the way, I'm using the thread that came in my Speedy Stitcher. It's a very thick, waxed thread. I have no idea what size it is, but it's really thick. My industrial machine might be able to feed this, but I doubt a home sewing machine would have any hope of using this. So, to make the first stitch, you drive the needle through the leather and then pull the tail of the thread all the way through. And then you just pull the needle back out. Then you move to the next stitch hole. When you insert the needle through, as you begin to withdraw the needle, it'll form a loop. That's exactly how a sewing machine sews. When the needle starts to withdraw, this loop is formed, and then the hook on the shuttle catches it and attaches it to the bobbin thread and forms a stitch. So since there is no shuttle, you have to be the shuttle. Take that tail that we pulled through, put it through this loop, and then withdraw the needle, and that forms the knot. And you want to, you may have to finagle this one way or the other, but you want that knot to be inside the leather. At this last stitch, I'm going to pull on the bottom side or the back side of the belt, what would have been the bobbin thread if this were sewn with the machine, and that's going to pull a loop up, and by grabbing that loop, I'm going to pull the thread that's on the front to the back. And I'll just tie that into a knot, and then I'll cut it off and I'll melt it down with a lighter because it's going to be on the back. This isn't the prettiest way to finish this, but because it's going to be on the back side, I don't think it's going to matter. So now the belt is cut to the length and shape that it's supposed to be, and it's got the stitches in the end. This is a pretty rough repair, basically just trying to save something that otherwise wasn't being used. Someone who does this kind of work a lot more than I do could probably make this look like brand new, but that really wasn't the point of this. One thing I would suggest if you're going to do something like this and you're really concerned about the appearance is I thought about starting the stitching in the existing stitch holes, but honestly I just wasn't confident that I was going to be able to get that needle through and not tear out some of the leather, and I didn't want to take a chance on ruining this just to try to make it look a little bit better. Again, I think, you know, when this is being worn, nobody's going to see this and say, oh look, there's a a stitch missing. So, but that is something you could do if you wanted to make this perfect. I'm going to take this to work and probably steal some paint to finish the edge. You could use beeswax or maybe some other kinds of substances that I'm not aware of and burnish this. There are tools that are made out of wood to make the edge smooth. Again, I don't have any of that stuff, so I'll try to put a picture or a clip of the finished belt, but I won't be able to show you the procedure that I'm going to use to finish the edge. Actually, yes, I will. I ended up taking the belt to my father-in-law's shop where he has a buffing machine that happened to have some soft buffing wheels on it, and I don't even know what substance was left on the wheel, but it actually worked pretty well to simulate the finish that was on the rest of the belt. It's not perfect, but it'll do. The point is, pretty simple to make this modification, particularly if you're looking for function over form. Just a regular pair of fabric store scissors cuts this fine, a cheap X-Acto knife, and then this inexpensive hand tool that you can use to stitch it. And if you were repairing a piece of leather gear or even heavy canvas or other fabric, this thing would work pretty well for that. This is actually my first time using the Speedy Stitcher. I've been aware of its existence for years, and I've got this one sometime, I don't know, a year or two ago, and I've just never had an occasion to try to use it. And it's actually really cool. It's easy to use and seems like it would be a really handy repair tool, especially if you needed to carry something to do repairs on heavy gear with and you weren't able to bring a sewing machine along with you. So it might be something to add to your tool list. I hope you found that helpful. If you like this video, click on the thumbs up button. If you're not already a subscriber, I'd love to have you subscribe to my channel. You can check out some merchandise I have in the Teespring shelf below if you want to help support what I'm doing. Thanks for watching.